I was really fascinated by the Zapruder film moment of the PGA when Tiger hits a ball way the hell and gone so far that the cameras cannot track it and it's bouncing around. And there was some talk, and still is. I think it's unknown to this point whether a fan may have interfered with that ball. But as you say, this was a great showdown. McCord was standing there and said he felt like it was like Ali and Frazier. They were really trading body blows all day. And Bob May finally trundles in an impossible putt from over the hole on the last hole of regulation. And then Tiger faces a do or die, somewhat slippery, about a 6-footer. And runs it in. After that, they're going to start the playoff, and Steve Williams asks him, what were you thinking? That becomes a putt that you have to make just to reach a playoff. And Tiger said, I'm Tiger Woods. I'm supposed to make that putt.
Well, it's great to finally connect with you, man.
Yes, absolutely. And one of these, I want to talk to you about Anstruther, my favorite place to play in the world, where you can finish and then go and get the best fish and chips on earth.
We'll definitely talk about that for sure. But it is great to connect with you because years ago, Kevin, when I was just getting into this, I had the chance to write a couple pieces for Golf Magazine, some short stuff, and
right.
You were editor, and it was a big thrill to have a byline in golf, but I don't think we ever actually met. So
not until now.
Although, not until now.
I'm an admirer of your sentences.
Oh, Kevin, thank you.
Everything flows, and you can sense the voice and intelligence behind the lines. So I'm looking for a course called Massachusetts.
You could definitely. There's enough great golf there to do it for sure, no doubt about it. But I'm really excited about the book that you've just written, Kevin. You've written a lot of books, a lot of golf books, other baseball books, non-golf books, which I find very impressive, very very nimble as a writer, researching and covering different topics. So now we come to this beautiful book, The Tiger Slam, and also very nice to see an avid reader press, Simon & Schuster book, and your first book with Joe Fee.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
I'm doing my third with Joe Fee, so it's great to have an editor who's as crazy about golf as you are.
That's true.
As we are.
And a lot of good books coming out of Avid Reader Press.
Really, there really are. So, and this is certainly one of them. So, I just really, really enjoyed this, and Kevin, it took me back to a better time. It felt like a time before, lives and piffs and that stuff, and before Tiger was human, and to go down that path as well. It's the inside story of the greatest golf ever played. And it's it takes us very closely into the 4 consecutive majors the Tiger wins in 2000 and 2001. And what's interesting, there'll actually be people listening to this or who will read the book who would have either been very young or might not even have been alive when that happened, which is just making me feel very, very old. So I do want to dive in on the book, but why this book now? You write about all sorts of different stuff. So why did you want to do this book?
Well, as you say, he was immortal before he was human. And I was drawn to, as you mentioned, it seems to me like it was yesterday, and it's 25 years. I realized we're coming up on 25 years. And I think not only was it appreciated as a remarkable event at the time, but it only looks better as time passes. I'm pleased to be able to write about Tiger Woods at a time before scandal, before injuries, when really Tiger Mania was taking over the world and making golf a major sport in a way that it hadn't been before. I think when Arnold Palmer came along early in the TV era, well, that took golf by leaps and bounds forward. Tiger did the same thing again, and I think there's a great case to be made that it's not only the best feat in golf history, but one of the most remarkable feats in sports history.
I think you're right, and the book makes that case, and we'll debate that a little later in the podcast if anything matches this or could possibly match it. But when you're setting out to write a book like this, a Tiger Woods story, what's the challenge? I mean, there's got to be a unique challenge to that because any writer, sports writer knows going into writing a Tiger Woods book, Tiger ain't going to talk to you. So what kind of unique challenge does that present? Does that discourage you, or you have to have a strategy going into it for sure?
Yeah, as you say, it wasn't surprising. It wasn't discouraging. I certainly offered making the case that this book is not about scandal and it's not about injury. All of that stuff is in the future. This is about 2000 and 2001. What I believe is the best golf played up until that time and even since that time. I don't think what he was doing in 2000, 2001 has been matched. Maybe briefly by a guy named Tiger Woods, but not in a sustained fashion as he did at that time. So, as you well know, you have to triangulate. If you're unable to, sometimes you write about someone who's not even around anymore.
Of course.
You talk to those who knew him well, who were there at the time. And that's how Butch Harmon winds up being remarkably helpful. So does Bob May. So does Mark O'Meara. So does Gary McCord, who was on the ground at the time, narrating what was going on, including there were so many remarkable moments during that slam that I think it's also a great pleasure to go back and rewatch them again and again and again, moment by moment, to recapture that excitement, to hear him talking to his caddy. And also at the beginning of the research process, you read everything that has been written about the event. And that's a pleasure, too. It was fun to find out that I think Steve Williams is the only caddy ever to have 2 memoirs.
I think that is a feat in itself. That's
and it may soon be 3.
A sort of slam. Is that right? Yeah. Right. We'll see what.
That's true.
Yeah, that's good for Stevie. And Steve, he's definitely a voice in the book. I think that's one of the really fun things about reading the book is that it's not just you don't miss Tiger's. I mean, you get Tiger's voice in various different ways, but you get to spend time with all these other people who are around him and playing against him and covering him. So it was, there's a nice nostalgia in that as well that I think takes you back into that moment. So if we're going back to those years, the book talks about this, and I just want to revisit it because some people might forget that Tiger, between the 97 Masters, that there's the swing change. Like that was the big thing, Tiger makes the swing change. Was it the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do? It obviously turns out to be the right thing to do because he wins 4 consecutive majors, but take us through when and why the swing change.
He felt that in order to win majors, he needed to be more consistent. He would get stuck at the top, as he said. I'm very glad to be able to talk with Butch Harmon about this and other folks because I'm not much of a diagnostician of the golf swing. I go to a tour event and you look down the range and they all look sensational to me.
Yeah, right. How did they not all win?
Yes, but he is such a student of the game, and I think it's admirable about Tiger Woods that he was so determined to max out his game. His long-range goal, of course, was to surpass Jack Nicklaus's 18 majors. That's going to take a long time, even for him. But he's going to prepare for that. And in the meantime, he's going to set a short-term goal. He asked O'Meara, who at that time had not won a major, do you think it's realistic to win 4 in a row? And O'Meara said no. And Tiger said, well, I think it could be done. He prepared for that by taking his game to the highest level yet. He went and remade what was already the best swing in golf history to make it better so that he would be able to count on it down the stretch in majors. And we saw the result. It also helped that he had a new golf ball.
Yeah, the golf ball is an interesting part of the story because something that happens during this whole period is this shift to the 2 and 3 piece ball, rather than the wound core with Bellata. So that, gosh, what a change that was. So, yeah. So that's a really interesting part of the story is, Tiger's playing a 2-piece ball and then comes back for the Masses and welcome Pro V1, and now everyone's got that ball, and it's like, watch out. So that's very interesting part of the story. Butch has a great. You say, this. He goes and works with Butch Harmon. I thought that was those, because he needs to hit it. He decides straighter, especially with the driver, that he can't sacrifice being wild at all with the driver, specifically for majors. You can probably get away with that at most tour events, but the way he was hitting it wasn't going to win enough majors. So he makes the change just for majors, and that focus. There's so many things in the book. I kept circling things. I didn't know that, which was, or I'd forgotten that, which was wonderful. And you talk about Tiger hitting inappropriate shots at other tournaments to get ready for majors. That struck me as a wild idea. It's so hard to win. And you see just winning one PGA Tour event is such a life-changing moment. And here he is tinkering when he's out. Tell us about that.
I think it was telling about him. I mean, you're playing the Western Open, and of course you'd rather play well than not play well. But what mattered to him was Scotland is coming up, so he's going to hit some low runners that were inappropriate, as Butch Harmon put it, for the particular tournament he was in. But that's how determined he is, and I thought it was telling that when Tiger describes that. He's asked, well, if you're going to practice for playing the old course, just go out on a range and hit a bunch of stingers, hit low shots left and right. And he says it's not the same. If you don't do it in competition, it does not feel the same. And that's why he would do it in a PGA Tour event and finish 20th instead of first, and be pleased by that because it helped him max out his game as nobody else did since Nicklaus, I think, for the majors. He was ready when the majors came around, and that was one of his great skills that he had.
Yeah, I mean, that extraordinary focus on those 4 events and doing whatever it takes to get ready for them. That's that. I thought that was like, wow. Well, no wonder he's had that success, and for a lot of other reasons as well, and for the work he did with Butch Harmon, who I think is very interesting in the book, and we get some great Harmon stories about him and his dad, and I didn't know there's a section about, he's a pretty interesting character, a pretty fiery guy. Like,
truly. And he has a golf pedigree in a way that Tiger did not. Here's a teacher whose dad, the father of 3 golf teachers, would lord it over them and say, here's my green jacket, where is yours? And Claude Harmon Sr. had this wonderful story about playing with Hogan at the Masters. They're at number 12, and Hogan is, this is one of those stories about Hogan's incredible focus, which no one would match, maybe even Tiger would not ever surpass. But Hogan hits a ball up about 2 feet from the hole on number 12 at Augusta, and then Claude Harmon steps up and makes a hole-in-one. They walk over to the green. Hogan taps in and says, Claude, I birdied that hole. I don't think I've birdied that hole before. What did you have? And Claude Harmon Sr. said, well, I had an ace, Ben, and that's how focused on his shots Ben Hogan was. And Tiger would dig it out of the dirt in the same way that Hogan did. There were such admirable characters in that way, and such perfectionists.
I love that story in the book. I hadn't heard that one, but or I'd forgotten it if I had. That's so great. What'd you have? Oh yeah, I had an ace.
Ben. Yes.
Talk about focus, but yeah, I mean that's the getting into that zone where all you see is what you're doing, and everything around you is just background. That's a pretty exceptional thing to be able to do. There's a line so did Butch Harmon really punch a priest?
He did punch a priest, and the priest had it coming, according to him. It was just completely out of line, and I don't think he knocked him out or anything. It was more of a Mike Tyson at 58 punch, I think, than a Mike Tyson in his heyday. But and Butch had a heck of a temper. When he was playing, he'd go under par for a long time and then make a triple, snap his clubs over. He did his Tommy Bolt impression, and hurl them into a pond. And he didn't. He came back from Vietnam differently, and he still does not talk about that. It was interesting that both he and Earl Woods are, of course, Vietnam veterans. Earl Woods, a lieutenant colonel, outranked the heck out of him. But Butch talked about coming back from Vietnam and having a much more even keel and devoting himself to other players before Tiger. But seeing Tiger swing the first time, he described it as it must have been like seeing Mozart, hearing Mozart for the first time. And I think that's the sort of genius we're talking about. And somebody like Harmon, even though it wasn't going to last all that much longer, still prizes those moments of seeing the game played really as well as it could be played, I think.
Yeah, I wonder, could you imagine Mozart coming to you and saying, how do I get better?
I need to play differently, play better, right?
Yeah. I want to play better in the big the big orchestra. So what should I do? So yeah, I think that bond with him and Earl is really interesting as you explore it in the book. I did want to ask you a question about. So we had Hughes Norton on the podcast about a little while ago to talk about his book Rainmaker.
I read it,
and it's really fascinating. Hughes was wonderful. So he talks about his rise and fall and getting, being Tiger's original agent, sort of going from courting him from a very young age, getting him pretty huge deals with Titleist and Nike before he won anything, and being fired shortly after the Masters in the '97 Masters, gets fired in '98 and eventually gets fired at IMG, etc. So I just wanted to get, since Steiny and that whole relationship comes up a few times in the book, and since you were around for a lot of that, I wanted to get your perspective on it. Hughes was, since you've read the book, was obviously very disappointed, and I don't think was quite sure what happened. I don't know if you have any perspective on that from as you were covering golf.
Not particularly on Hughes's situation, but I do think that at that point there was a ruthlessness in Team Tiger, and Tiger was so focused on his game that he wanted enforcers to keep distractions to a minimum, and that's what Mark Steinberg did effectively. I think Tiger felt that Mark Steinberg would do that more effectively than Hughes Norton. Of course, that is hard to say, but. I remember there was a time when Colin Kaepernick was making all the news in the NFL, and Tom Brady was asked, well, do you want to take a political position here? And Brady said, no, it takes too much. It takes all of my focus to prepare for a football game on Sunday. And I think that's what Tiger did. Tiger screened off everything that he possibly could and was willing to let Mark Steinberg come off as the bad guy. And it turned out that was a role that he was pretty well suited for.
Yeah, it's interesting in the book. And I was kind of bummed because, I love John Garrity so much as a writer, as a person, as a lover of Irish links, and certainly a friend of yours, and Jaime Diaz. And so there's these wonderful names and folks who covered Tigers through the years. When he gets named Sportsman of the Year, there's a big hubbub about... They put John's book out on everyone's seat, which was a collection of writing about Tiger, and Steinberg gets very upset and they're not going to do it. What happened there, and how did that sort of make you feel about what was happening with Tiger?
It made me feel that there was so much tumult around him that maybe a different managing arrangement might have lessened that, but I think it suited his personality. I mean, it was interesting at the time that Team Tiger was upset with Sports Illustrated and was going to hold it over their heads. So, well, maybe he won't even come and accept the Sportsman of the Year award, even though Jim Nantz is going to present that to him in New York City. So something as minor as putting a book that celebrated his achievements by John Garrity on each writer's chair in the press room, not a very minor thing, but it's something that Mark Steinberg could put his feet down about, and he certainly did until his boss, Mark McCormick, gets a phone call, and he does back down at that point, and the Sportsman of the Year award is handed out. It was so important at that time. I mean,
it was a big deal.
Those of us, yes, and those of us who remember our days at Sports Illustrated fondly remember when it was so important that, an actual physical magazine comes out every week, and each year one person selected. Tiger he's the Sportsman of the Year more than Michael Jordan at that time. So he's competitive enough to like that, just as he's going to like it when the Nike campus in Beaverton, Oregon, builds a Tiger Woods building that is larger than the Michael Jordan building. These hierarchies matter.
Yeah.
I think that was an instance in which maybe Mark Steinberg went a little too far, but it didn't keep Tiger from winning the award. And afterward, everybody went back to square one.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because, I don't want to wear my media hat too tightly, but, you look at that and you're like, yeah, we're putting you on the cover of Sports Illustrated. You like that. We're telling the world how wonderful you are. We're helping build your brand. We're doing a lot of the things that help you get these extraordinary deals. Just kind of throw us a bone. So, it is what it is.
I think it does have something to do with the way that media was changing. I mean, it goes all the way back to Mickey Mantle and Arnold Palmer to some degree, and many other people who had friends in the press. Well, that's not happening anymore. And an athlete of Tiger's stature in that time doesn't need the press. He's got a whole management company. He's got commercial campaigns to get his image and his message out. I think that he wanted to show the press who was boss. That was important to him. It's what he did to Phil Mickelson in the 2001 Masters, hitting the ball around, slinging it around the bend at 13. It was important for Tiger and also for Team Tiger to show, everybody has to ask us. Nobody is at the level that we are at. And that was emphasized not only in that one little incident with John Garrity's book, but many other times. Tiger is the boss, especially at that time, and everybody is going to pretty much do his bidding.
Yeah, you said it. There was a point where Jaime and you and others realized, he was sort of in charge of this relationship, and I guess it's that he didn't need the media. And you know what? When you put it that way, in terms of how all these other ways that he had to get his message out, it's probably true.
I think it is true. Yeah. And to some degree, it is a testament to his remarkable focus on the course. And to some degree, maybe some of it was overdone.
So, and to some degree, it's because he wins a lot. And so let's get into the winning, especially accomplishing, going on this run. The book is really focuses very closely on these 4 tournaments. I just want to take us, since you obviously in doing the research, as you mentioned, you got to, watch these tournaments, I'm sure many times, look at them very closely. The book, really takes you into each one, breaking down each, the big shots and the big moments and the choices and the discussions that are made over them. So it's a really wonderful, it's just a nice experience to walk around in a round of golf with Tiger Woods and Stevie Williams and the other players he was playing against. So if you could, let's go to you at the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. Tell me a moment or an event or a shot that you think had the largest sort of impact on his winning. That seemed very, very consequential to, the 2000 U.S. Open, he won by a lot. So, but there are moments where you could say, okay, this looks like it's Tiger's.
There are. I mean, he hit a miraculous shot out of the rough at one point over a cypress tree that nobody else would dare try. He had the moment of high comedy when Steve Williams had failed to look into the bag for how many balls there are, and Tiger had been practicing putting the night before in his hotel room, and they practically run out of balls on their last hole at Pebble, and Williams is not at that point saying, "Oh, this is the last ball."
Yeah, tell us, how did that happen? I had heard that story. It was wonderful to be reminded of it. So
yeah, there are only so many Nike balls made by Bridgestone, but they've got the Nike swoosh on them in the whole world at that point. The ball is still new, so they only have so many. And Tiger had left 3 or 4 of them in his hotel room on the floor when he left that morning, and they're resuming a round that was called because of the weather. So it seems like it's probably going to be okay, but then Tiger flips the ball to a fan. Then he yanks one halfway to Hawaii, as he put it in at 18, and they're down to 1 ball. And Williams is saying, look, really encouraging the safe play. Let's take the safe play here. Tiger's not about to take the safe play, and he slings one all the way back and fades it back over the beach. Goes okay. And Steve Williams survives a good deal of discomfort, as he put it, anatomical discomfort at that moment. But what was most revealing to me about that particular U.S. Open was the last day, when he is in a position where now he could 6-putt every green, the last few greens, and still win the tournament. Well, what motivates him? He's determined that he's not going to make a bogey today. And he is as wrapped up in that as the score itself. At the time, a lot of the analysts were saying, he's going for the U.S. Open scoring record. He wasn't. He was determined not to make a bogey that day because it would besmirch this day of his. So, and I think that's another way. A lot of players, I think when you're at that level, it's really important to manufacture goals. Michael Jordan used to come up with grudges. So somebody said something that might be taken as a criticism. Oh, well, I'll show him. Tiger is going to win the tournament so as not to let down. And this is I believe, the greatest grinder who ever stood on a golf course. To keep himself as wound up as he would be if he had a 1-shot lead, he's saying, I'm not going to make a bogey today. And he succeeded in that as he did with just about everything else at that time.
Yeah, pretty extraordinary. That and right. So when you're that far ahead, there's this sort of abstract, what's the point? What's the competition? Yes. So to turn it into something you can grind over, that's actually pretty good advice for all of us. Probably not like, I'm not going to make a bogey today, but maybe I'm not going to make a double today.
Yes, I think that's true. And my main swing thought is, it'd be terrible if I hit this out of bounds. It's not really the way to approach your swing.
No, there are better ways. So he goes on. That was the 100th U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. What an appropriate starting ground for this incredible run. Goes on, of course, and what a better place for Chapter 2 of it, the home of golf. The 2000 Open at St. Andrews. The most fantastic thing that I learned in your book about that accomplishment. We at the Golfers Journal call ourselves, we are the Broken Tee Society. Our logo is a broken tee. You see broken tees on the wall behind me.
Yes.
Tiger goes through the entire tournament with 1 tee. Is that true?
According to Stevie, that is true. And he kept the tee, put it away. Okay, this one did its job. That tee is going to stay in with his wallet and keys for a long time after that, an indefinite period that I was unable to determine how long that might have been. But, as you well know from playing more Scottish courses than I have, it's such a different game. And for him to completely restyle his approach to the game from one major to the next is a remarkable achievement. And I love the moment when he and Duval were on the range entertaining fans and making up some shots. You don't find them having fun very often. And they're both quite grim often on the golf course, but to have Duval hitting one left to right and Tiger right to left and have them try to hit the ball in the middle, and the fans are loving it. There were some very nice moments then. And then a remarkable moment afterward when Duval is on the plane and has his hands around the claret jug after a horrible disappointment on the road hole on the last day, paired with Tiger, whom he admired so much. I thought it was great that Duval is going to get that trophy himself before long.
Yeah, it's true. He is. Duval was, in the PGA and the Masters of this run, things are a little bit closer, but I guess Duval was there for a
fighting
while.
his back all the time. It was, and then there's nothing like the road hole. I think it's a little bit like 17 at Sawgrass. That for some of us, every now and then, there's nothing more fun than to watch the best players in the world just struggle. To hit the ball in the water or to fight the road hole to a standstill. The strategy of the way that Tiger played the road hole each day was pretty striking. He had a tremendous save from back by the road. I think that was Saturday.
And Duval, of course, I can remember that.
Yes,
what did
that
he
was
make?
excruciating.
8 or more. Yeah, that was a tough one to watch. I can recall that. You know what I didn't recall? Because I don't think they showed it. I didn't know a woman ran onto the 18th tee with Tiger's coming up bare ass naked.
For quite a while. There are, if you're doing some heavy duty research, you will find some photos. And she was an exotic dancer from nearby Edinburgh and thought that this might be good for business. At this point, Tiger was getting used to that kind of thing. But it doesn't appear on when you watch the tournament again on YouTube.
Noted. So everyone who's going to the YouTubes to check out our exotic dancing friend, you will not find her. I didn't even know that happened. But so Tiger not breaking a tee at St. Andrews. Of course, he's still welcome to the Broken Tee Society, Tiger, if you're listening. But I think that's just a testament to the kinds of shots that he was hitting, how precise he was, and trying to hit the ball low and hitting the ball low in the face and just doing all these incredibly cool things, along with putting, as you note in the book. He putts from 140 plus feet. And for someone who's playing golf, otherwise playing in Florida and stuff, that's incredible. As you say, that ability to adjust like that.
So to go from the little bitty greens at Pebble to these gigantic greens. I think a little bit like Bobby Jones, who really disliked the old course the first time. Tiger really came to love links golf because of the creativity you can employ around the greens. I remember, the old story with Sam Snead riding the train into St. Andrews the first time, and he looks around and says, "Where's the golf course?" It takes a little while to appreciate the subtleties of that place, and Tiger really did.
It is that experience, right? As you pull in, it's this beautiful giant field, and there's a guy walking his dog. I see a flag. I get it. So wins at St. Andrews. So he's down. He's got 2. Going for number 3. A lot of, as you say in the book, there's criticism of the PGA at that time of Valhalla. As a venue, but it really, I think, gives of the 4 tournaments, gives the best showdown, and an unexpected one with Bob May. If you had to look at a key moment in that tournament, the book sort of talks about, the moment when Stevie lies to him about the yardage. Tell us about that.
I was struck by that, and Williams said he knew that Tiger would. He was pumped. He would be too aggressive, and so Stevie gives him the wrong yardage, and I think Tiger would not have appreciated that. But it pans out. There's a couple of times in this period, Steve Williams is really on a roller coaster. And things work out very well for him, and that was certainly one instance of it. I was really fascinated by the Zapruder film moment of the PGA, where Tiger hits a ball way the hell and gone, so far that the cameras cannot track it, and it's bouncing around. And there was some talk, and still is. I think it's unknown to this point whether a fan may have interfered with that ball. But as you say, this was a great showdown. McCord was standing there and said he felt like it was like Ali and Frazier. They were really trading body blows all day. And Bob May finally trundles in an impossible putt from over the hole on the last hole of regulation. And then Tiger faces a do or die, somewhat slippery, about a 6-footer. And runs it in. After that, they're going to start the playoff, and Steve Williams asks him, what were you thinking? That becomes a putt that you have to make just to reach a playoff. And Tiger said, I'm Tiger Woods. I'm supposed to make that putt. And I think that's part of what made him great at that time, because to him, the universe doesn't make sense if he doesn't win. The world is set up for things to go properly because he's put in the effort. He's strategically better than anybody else. He's technically better than anybody else. His mental game is better than anybody else's. He expects to win, and he thinks that's the way it ought to be.
I forgot how exciting that was when Bob May makes that crazy putt.
He really did, and that was after a horrendous 80-foot uphill putt before that he just practically hid his face. He couldn't believe he zoomed it past the cup to a nearly impossible position. And the putt that he did make to force Tiger to make his went about 2 or 3 different directions on the way to the hole.
Tiger gave us, man, it just like, if people wonder why all the things the Tiger's been through and this and that and the other and how he treats someone or someone else, like why there's so much Tiger love, like kind of growing up or watching golf at this point or being in golf at this point, it was so damn great. Like it was to get this, at every major to have, this kind of champion who really not just transcended golf, transcended sport, and, went out and gave us this kind of drama and believed he could win and then actually did it. It made you like, it was like there's a superhero out there and he plays this game that I love. And I think that affection for Tiger that still lasts today, even for whatever he's done or been through, like, man, it just reminds you why people love him so much.
Yes, I think you can still thrill to that performance. Maybe you hate what happened later, but the performance is what it is at that time. And, as you say, he's elevating the game of golf. The great Dan Jenkins said at one point, he just shook his head and said, "Can you believe it? The world's most famous athlete is a golfer."
Right. Yeah. What a gift for golf and for golfers. Right. So he's got the 3. And it's a matter of course, the debates of whether the Grand Slam or the Tiger Slam, and because the calendar year comes to a close, the PGA was not the first event on the tour of the major season. It was the last back then, and so we go to 2001 to see if Tiger can hold all 4 at one time. And we come into the Masters, but things have changed, as you noted, in the book. And one was certainly equipment wise that, by that point, I guess the year before, maybe, I think you may have an interesting stat, the year before in the Masters, they're still playing the Tour Balada 90. And this, made by our friends at Titleist, this podcast, of course, brought to you by the #1 ball in golf. But by 2000, nobody's playing it. They're all playing the Pro V1.
And it narrowed the gap a bit, yes.
Narrowed the gap a little bit. So people are saying, oh, well, Tiger hasn't been winning a ton since the PGA. They refer to it as a little bit of a mini slump, or some people call it a slump, etc. And here he comes.
And it was helpful to him, I think, that that period, it was both tremendously difficult as far as all the hype, all the questions. Here comes his attempt to win all 4 majors in succession. At the same time, he spent the whole off season rehearsing for the Masters. He's on the range at Isleworth hitting. Let's see this one for 13. Let's see the one you'll hit off the first tee. He was certainly ready, although he had gone through a Tiger slump at that time and was getting increasingly irked at anybody who would, of course, mention that he hadn't been winning at the same rate as he had the year before. I think it was terrifically important for him to get back to Augusta. He felt at home there on the course, certainly as a golfer, and that wound up being. We had a tremendous battle with Bob May, a great David and Goliath story in the PGA Championship. Now you've got Tiger against his 2 most potent adversaries. Here's Duval and Mickelson down the stretch with him in a thrilling back nine. And of course, that's what Augusta does. It's going to give you, if things go well, an impossibly dramatic back nine. And here was one of those. And again, it's going to get to a point where he's motivating himself. He's elevating himself, and everybody else is punching himself out trying to keep up.
So Mickelson and Duval. I thought what was interesting in the book is, you take the time to get into the relationship with Duval. I think how Tiger admires him and how because he's a real grinder as well.
Right.
And admires his swing, and so they get along very well. And of course, not so much with Phil. You were around covering golf at that time. That's something that's often been talked about. Obviously, they're not best friends. What do you think the root of that animosity is, or was?
Well, maybe it is. Their personalities are so different. I mean, anybody who's talked a little bit with Phil Mickelson, can be refreshing. If you're a golf scribe, go up to the guy. He actually listens. He has a certain curiosity about the world to him. While any back and forth with Tiger is going to be laced with suspicion. It was often said in those days, both among fans and in the press corps, well, is Phil a phony? One thing he did was stand and sign autograph after autograph after autograph when Tiger didn't. I think you ought to get some credit for that. But their personalities were so different that I think it was crucial for Tiger to show Phil who was boss. And it was fortunate for Tiger that they were playing together. They get to 13, and Phil Mickelson's carefully not watched him swing, which I think is an interesting thing too. You don't want that image of that swing in your head when you're trying to compete with this person. They get to 13, and Tiger's been practicing this shot all winter long, and not only that winter, but previous winters too. Phil just busts a big fade way down the 13th fairway. Tiger steps up with a 3-wood and slings a big draw around past it. And at that point, they're walking off, and Tiger's going to lay it on thick when Mickelson looks up and says, "Do you always hit your 3-wood that far?" And Tiger takes a beat and says, "No, sometimes farther." I think that's the moment that at least by Tiger's lights, it was okay. We'll demonstrate who's top dog here.
Yeah, and like you said, Tiger wants that. He needs that. He wants that. And who doesn't? To have that adversary in your group is beneficial for sure. So he goes on. Right. Yeah, he goes on and gets it done. He has the Tiger Slam. He has all 4 trophies on the coffee table, so to speak. And there's debate. Is it a Grand Slam? Is it better than what's better? So the only other Grand Slam in golf, of course, Bobby Jones, which was a completely different kind of Grand Slam. Can you compare the two? I mean, or is it just two apples and oranges to look at the Tiger Slam versus the Jones Grand Slam?
I believe that the Tiger Slam towers over the Jones Grand Slam. Bobby Jones was a great player and so important in the history of the game. But 2 of those tournaments, he beat only amateurs. Sure. And the game was not as advanced yet as it was by the time Tiger came along. I don't think we're ever going to see anybody win 4 majors in a row again. And I've been asked quite a bit recently how the Tiger Slam might stack up against other sports feat. Will Chamberlain scored 100 points in a game. Well, there's an asterisk to that one because he missed 26 times and his teammates are feeding him the ball they're passing up layups to give Wilt the ball the whole 4th quarter. I think you hear so often about Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak, which is a towering achievement that will never be forgotten. He did get a couple of favorable calls on balls that might have been called errors, that were called base hits. And I think it's also important to bear in mind that Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak came before Jackie Robinson broke the color line. So there's a level of watered down competition in DiMaggio's day, not his own doing, but it's a fact. And Satchel Paige was mowing people down, but wasn't allowed to pitch against Joe DiMaggio. I think all things considered, the Tiger Slam is the top sports feat that's ever taken place.
There it is, folks. All right. Get on that hill, Kevin. I'm probably there with you. The book is subtitled The Inside Story of the Greatest Golf Ever Played. So obviously if it's the greatest sports achievement, greatest golf achievement, I mean, but what about, so Byron Nelson, he wins,
sure did.
I guess his 11 wins in a row, not too shabby. I mean, is there anything in golf? If you have to rank them, like, all right, if that's number one, what are your 2s and 3s then?
Goodness, that's a good question. I was mesmerized just walking with Tiger in 2008 at the Open at Torrey Pines when he's going to win on a broken leg. Some of that is just being present. I wasn't around in 1930 when Bobby Jones and when Jones won at St Andrews, he was acclaimed. This is changing the future of golf quite a bit. Arnold Palmer will do even more later, I think, to repopularize the Open Championship. But Jones's Grand Slam is certainly up there. I mean, I suppose if we're going to do win, place, and show, I'd have to go with Byron Nelson's streak as place, and Jones's slam as show.
There you go. You know what I love about Jones's slam in terms of what's so impressive to me about it? In that time, even like just getting to those 4 tournaments in 1 year was incredibly difficult, right? So you've got you got to make sure, because there's all these stories about like, oh, someone couldn't go to the British Open that year, because it takes a month to get there, and like because they were playing in the US or whatever. So the calendar had to line up. You had to be able to get there in time, get a train there. So because when I was doing a course called Scotland and you're visiting, the Rota, there's always this story of like, oh, he would have done this, but the train was delayed, or so and so would have done this, or the boat was going to sink. So there's all these like just getting to 4 tournaments was a huge achievement.
Yes.
And then the pressure's on, oh, I better win them, because I'm not going to probably be able to make it next year. And there's a very tight window when you can actually accomplish that. So Jones making that happen as generally not, and with his health issues that he had, and then getting it done. Pretty cool.
And of course we should also include 23 years later, Ben Hogan wins 3 and in an astounding year after the accident, which is such a remarkable recovery. And as you say, without transportation, he couldn't play the PGA Championship and the Open Championship the same week. So he didn't even have a chance to win a Grand Slam. So
how about that? Yeah.
So let's make Hogan in 1953 number 1A.
Okay, 1A. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'm glad we brought that up because the Hogan fans be coming out of the woodwork. Yeah, that's right. Like it just with the travel, you can't. And it's and he only went over to. He never played St. Andrews.
One time.
Yeah, he went over and he won at Carnoustie. So, yeah. So that's some Hogan fun facts. Wonderful thing about the book is it is full of like things one had forgotten or doesn't know. I love this. Why Tiger. So the cover of Golfer's Journal number 23 is Tiger's hand, and it's got the tape on the finger, and it's him tossing some grass. And I love that cover because it just immediately suggests, without exactly who it is, suggests all these wonderful things, but it's a very sort of minimalistic image. And in the book, I found out why he wears tape on that finger. So why? Well,
he's gets calloused, but you can callous so much that it breaks.
Yeah. So his dad teaches him that, to hold the club in this combination of 5 fingers or 4 fingers or whatever it was. And this callus on that finger just keeps breaking, and he's bleeding while he's playing golf.
And it's as with so many other things about Tiger, it traces back to Earl.
Yeah. It wasn't just, I'm wearing a Band-Aid because I always get something here. It came from the way his dad taught him to hold the golf club. And that's why he blisters in that spot and always wears tape there. And I love also the detail about Jordan and Jeter giving Tiger advice on how to talk to girls.
Yes.
Basically, how do I talk to girls? I think, what are they, at a nightclub or something? And they tell him, you tell him you're Tiger Woods.
That's all it takes.
I've tried that. I've told back in the day, I would tell many women that I was Tiger Woods, and it's never worked out. But it seemed Tiger seemed to figure that one out. Want to, before I let you go, Kevin, again, you've written so many wonderful books, but so many of our listeners will have enjoyed Tommy's Honor, either the book or the movie, hopefully both, because it's really an exceptional piece of writing, award-winning, won the Wind Award from the USGA. So I'm immediately very envious of you. I just somehow they keep losing. I don't know, Kevin. They keep losing my books over there. I never. That's an incredible achievement and a deserving one. And I'm just when I read that book, just so impressed by what the research must have been to get to the point where, I mean, it's one thing to write biography or history, but when you're going to write a story that reads like a novel, you have to get to know those characters so intimately and do that research where you feel comfortable to say, I can speak from I can imagine their thoughts. I can imagine their perspective. So how are you able to do that level of research to give us the sort of inner workings of old Tom and young Tom?
Well, that was such a joy to work on, to be over there for weeks at a time, to discover that at the University of St. Andrews, the microfiche is available. They're open until after midnight. And so I was wearing out microfiche machines, also going over to Glasgow, where the Mitchell Library has remarkable archives, especially with a publication called The Field that has shot-by-shot accounts. It's great that Golfomania was going on at that time, and the Times of London is sending correspondence up. There was a great deal of coverage of these huge matches that, say, old Tom and Tommy would play against the Park Brothers. There were so many of these matches going on, and again, you'd be able to read. It was really like discovering box scores from the very first baseball games, that we can go shot by shot here. And it was also helpful that old Tom Morris lived so long and so loved to reminisce about his son Tommy that he would tell these stories on himself, that Tommy would look at him and say, "Oh, you'd be a fine putter, father, if the hole were always a foot shorter, a foot closer." These are the times that you can really understand how they sounded with each other. And as you well know, the archives in Scotland, not just in sports, by no means just in sports, but also in golf, are so voluminous that you can really get yourself buried in there it's midnight before you know it.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, that must have been a great experience. And I think when in the Tiger Slam book, when we get to Scotland, your love of Scotland and your knowledge of Scotland definitely comes through, especially because, and especially love of St. Andrews. So those are wonderful depictions and scenes and a great, so the size of the cup, we learn the origin of the size of the cup in the Tiger Slam. You tell, so give us that story. And I'd heard a different story, and I'd probably written it as well. So I'm glad. I like your story. If you can share it with us.
Well, there is a story about the first hole cutter, which comes from Musselburgh. That does come a little bit later. Okay. What happened in St. Andrews was, after Tom Morris remakes the old course, or he's engaged in improving the old course, he's inventing top dressing, he's raking the greens, he's improving everything. At that point, they're still digging into the hole. You put your hand, after you hole out, you reach down, get some sand off this sandy turf, get some sand from the bottom of the hole, and that's how you make your tee for your next, to begin the next hole. Do that for a little while. That hole is getting kind of ragged, getting deep. Then it rains, the sides of the hole fall in. What do we need? well, old Tom, we need a cup liner. Among many other of his inventions, he invented the cup liner. Now, there happened to be drain pipes that were made at a local brickworks over in Kincapie, and they happened to be that exact dimension on the inside. I always thought if this is an accident of Scottish plumbing, I would have made so many more putts in my life if the hole were only the size of a bucket, and the game would go faster. I'm actually for that. But due to a trivium of Scottish plumbing, that particular diameter becomes the measure of the golf hole.
4 1/4 inches, right? So, like,
Yes.
what if he just grabbed like the 5-inch pipe?
Yes.
How much happier my life would be.
And then how many putts have you had that lipped out? They would all have gone in.
All those lip outs. Of course, I'd lip out some on the 5-inch pipe or the 10-inch pipe. But yeah, I love that. That was wonderful because I'd heard, yes, the hole cutter at Musselburgh is 4 1/4 inches, so that becomes sort of standardized. But that was interesting to know that comes later.
Yes, and as you say, there's nothing like walking around, just be breathing the air in Scotland, and that's one of the great pleasures of a course called Scotland.
Thank you, and it's one of the great pleasures of reading Tommy's Honor, and even and again in Tiger Slam, getting to go to the Open and experience what that week was like is just is so wonderful. You had mentioned earlier your love of Anstruther, and we featured Anstruther in the Golfer's Journal and the Rockies, and we were over there this summer, and I was over there this summer and met with some friends and some BTS members who went and played Anstruther the day before we played. We played at Muirfield, and they just had such a blast.
How long is that par 3? It's a blind par 3 on the side of a hill or a mountain.
Yeah, right. It's like they call it the hardest par 3 in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, certainly in Scotland, 250 yards, but it's blind, and you've got to hit like a cut driver into the wind. You're on the sea rocks. It's downhill. Then there's like nowhere to put the ball. So shout out to BTS member John Scott for making a 3 on that hole. First time playing it, which is a pretty unique achievement. But yeah, one of the great spots in golf that we both really love. And where do you get your fish and chips in Anster?
It's the Anstruther Fish Bar. Is that what it's called? It's right there.
Yeah.
But it's known throughout the country and the world. Get the mushy peas. You got to get the mushy peas. Yeah. But their fish and chips are sensational. And that course, I remember the last hole. I was playing there with my son, who was only about 12 at the time. And the last hole, he's trying to come down and finish well, and just yanks his approach shot well to the left of the green. It bounces a couple of times, hits a stone wall, and caroms back that far from the hole. So we had a nice finish at Anstruther.
There you go. The walls are tilted in your favor at Anstruther.
They are.
Don't miss it if you're playing golf in Scotland or in the Kingdom of Fife for sure. Before I let you go, Kevin, just want to know, written a lot of books, worked at the top of the sports magazine game at Sports Illustrated and Golf Magazine. What do you most love about what you get to do?
Golly, I love the research. Before you have to fill a blank page, I don't know if you feel this way. You always expect the elves to come in the middle of the night and fill a blank page, and they don't. It's reading, rewatching, re-experiencing, digging up some of these details that you mentioned. What delight to find an account of Tom saying, well, I'm lucky I found these drain pipes that happen to work. Those are the great delights of working on a book, I think, and there were many of those with the Tiger Slam.
You've had a wonderful career of capturing those moments, and again, you share so many in the Tiger Slam. And it's been so wonderful to talk to you. What's next, Kevin? Are you working on something?
I'm getting ready to, but this is that wonderful period in between.
Okay.
So if it warms up a little bit here in Massachusetts, one of my favorite things is to go drop 2 balls before anybody gets out on their course. Play 9 holes. You got an 18-hole score, and you're done. And it's only 9:30 in the morning.
I love it.
So the
I won't
workday is still ahead.
Love it. I won't tell the USGA.
Thanks.
In case you're posting, but
yes, take that back.
No, but you won the Wind Award. You're allowed to do whatever you want.
Well, yours is coming.
It's all. I know I've already tried to beg and bribe, but
there's got to be a lifetime achievement Wind Award.
If I just keep cranking these things out.
Yeah.
Awesome, Kevin. So much fun, and let's play some golf, man.
I'd like that.
So would I.
Good talking with you, Tom.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And if you enjoyed this episode, we strongly encourage you to become a member of the Golfer's Journal, or if you already are, to share it with your friends. As a reader-supported publication, we couldn't do it without you. We also couldn't do it without the help of our partners, and they are Titleist, Scotty Cameron, FootJoy, Holderness & Bourne, Omega, Charles Schwab, and BMW. We'll see you next time on the Golfer's Journal podcast.